How's it going, everybody? Nerds Rising here, and welcome back to the Nerd Cave. Sorry it's been a while since I posted a video, but I have been working on this video for about the last week, and I have found a pretty strong core breaker in the Open Great League, and that is Abomosnow. Now, I know there have been some other content creators out there that have made videos featuring Abomosnow lately, but I've been using it now for a couple weeks, and I've been using this team specifically for the last week of Open Great League and had some pretty decent success with it. It's definitely not perfect, and as you know, the algorithm loves to punish you once you get on a roll with a team, so I climbed up about 200 elo with the team and then ended up dropping probably about another 100 after that. So I did net gain some elo for sure, but the team functions as an ABB style team. Froslass is just an incredible safe switch. Obviously in the Open Great League, if something like a Bastiodon switches into it, you're basically just not going to be taking switchback or getting a shield because Bastiodon's super annoying, let's be honest. But the nice thing is, if you can draw out that Bastiodon or that best counter to ice, the Abomosnow can absolutely go off in the back because Abomosnow has very nice core breaking potential against the Lanturns that are everywhere right now and the fliers that are everywhere right now. And oftentimes, if you can get rid of that best ice counter with the Azu after Froslass draws it out, Abomosnow can absolutely close games like a champ. So you're going to see that in action in these battles here. And I did have a lot of very fun wins. So let's get into these battles. And before we do so, I want to say, again, thank you to everyone that's subscribed recently. We are past 150 subscribers, which is awesome. And again, sorry I haven't been putting a ton of content out lately. I am pretty busy. But to celebrate being past 150, I did add my friend code there at the bottom in that picture if you want to add me. I could use some more friends to send me gifts and stuff because I haven't added anybody in this game in a very long time. So that being said, let's check out these battles and let's see what the double ice backline can do. Alright, so getting into the first battle here, we have Azu on the lead into Bastiodon, and I do not like Bastiodon if I'm being honest, but if we're going to see a Bastiodon, we're glad to see it on the lead. And they're actually staying in, which is amazing for us because we do not want to see this in our back. And they're actually going to let us get to the Hydro Pump first. They could have CMP tied us there with the Stone Edge. I'm guessing they were hoping that I was running the Ice Beam Play Rough, but we're not. And they bring in a Shadow Victory Bell here. So this is either going to be Grass Hole or a team I've seen quite a bit, and that's Bastiodon, Victory Bell, and Medicham. And I was reading that it was probably going to be a Medicham, which is why I brought the Abomosnow into the Vic there. And as you see, it was a Medicham. And there we actually commit to an Energy Ball to force them to throw. And they do throw a Power-Up Punch, which is perfectly fine. They threw right away. So now we can come in with Froslass here, and we can get to a Shadow Ball before they get to a Psychic. And the reason I bring Froslass in here is because we don't really want it aligned to the Bastiodon, even though Azu has a pretty decent matchup against Medi. We want to keep this away from the Bastiodon. So we bring it in here. We do bait, figuring that the opponent basically has to shield, otherwise they have a very healthy Azu into their Bastiodon. Unfortunately, we do get baited with a pup there, and then they make a very nice play, and they bring in the Bastiodon. They did have a move loaded, as I mentioned earlier, but we're very carefully going to over-farm here, and as you see, I bank the Shadow Ball there before I switch out, and that's absolutely crucial, because that Medicham does have some extra energy. So now what we need to do here is basically farm up as much as we possibly can, because we're going to have to make sure that we get a Play Rough off against this Medicham here. So we get to the Play Rough. At this point, they're basically in Play Rough range. I throw the Play Rough here, and since I farmed up to 100 energy, I was only 2 bubbles away to my Play Rough here. So this is going to force that last shield from the Medicham. And at this point, if they shield, and they do, it's game over. They kind of had to shield. That Play Rough probably would have KO'd. And even though they're going to farm down here and come out with the Psychic, we do have a Shadow Ball loaded, and obviously Froslass is going to be winning CMP against the Medicham, and that's going to be a good game. So even though we had nice alignment there, that team is very tricky to play against because Bastiodon is just so obnoxiously thick, it can be quite difficult to get rid of. So in the next battle here, we have a Swampert lead, pretty common, and I'm sure you guys have seen out there, one of the #1 teams right now on PvPoke is Swampert Double Normal Flyer, which is actually a team that I like very much. a team that I've run historically the past couple seasons. But that team is now very, very strong with that wing attack buff. So we're just going to stay in, expecting it to be that team, knowing that our backline is going to have a very nice matchup here once we get this Swampert basically out of here. So we stay in. We did call that bait there, as you see. And even though they Earthquake, we survive it. And we farm down. So we take the 0 shield there. If they had Sludge Wave, they probably win the 0 shield. And the Pidgeot comes in, and we do get to a Hydro Pump before we get farmed down, which is perfect. Because if we can get a shield here, then either one of our back mons can absolutely clean this game up. So we're going to bring the Froslass in here. We're going to call a Feather Dance, knowing that even if they Brave Bird here, we will live. And at this point, we're just going to give 2 shields to Shadow Abomosnow. And they do Brave Bird. We do live it. We switch in Abomosnow, and there's a Noctowl. And 2-to-1 shields. Abomosnow is going to feast on this backline. And we were right on the team read there. Would have been a little bit tricky if it wasn't the team I expected. Like if they had something like a G-Fisk or a Bastiodon in back. But we made the right call. And by not safe switching out of that lead, we're now going to just absolutely shred their poor flyers. As you see there, we threw the Weather Ball just before they get to the Sky Attack. They shield, so we just farm down. And at this point, their Pidgeot now basically is going to get destroyed. 1 Weather Ball gets the shield. 2nd Weather Ball will be easily KOing the Pidgeot. And that's going to be a good game. So reading the team definitely helped us there. But as you see, if you can give shields to Abomosnow, it can go off because their whole team was weak to Abomosnow there. So a Shadow Walrein in the next battle. And again, this is a situation where even though our backline doesn't do terrible here, we're reading that oftentimes people like to pair Walreins with flyers, specifically Gliscor. If you remember, Home Slice Henry featured the very strong Walrein Gliscor core. And also a lot of people like to pair Walreins with Trevenants. Both things that we don't necessarily want to see with our Azu and that our backline does very well against. So we're just going to stay in here, play out the 0 shield. As you see, they do actually go for the Earthquake, but we actually get to the play rough before they get to their 2nd Earthquake. So we grab shield advantage here, and at this point, I'm just going to let my Azu go down. And it looks like the opponent does just go straight for the Earthquake here, which is perfectly fine. I bring the Froslass in, and they actually safe switch into the Gliscor, so they were probably running a double flyer backline. They see the Froslass, and they could see the match. So, again, reading the team there basically won us that match. They had double flyer, we had double ice, and we win the game. So, a Lanturn lead in the next battle. Lanturn, again, super common. Our Azu does not want to see this, but we bring in the Froslass, and they're not switching out. So right away, this tells me very likely going to be a flyer. Lanturn flyer core is just absolutely everywhere. And my guess is it's probably going to be something like a Pelipper or an Altaria, maybe a Noctowl. So we actually get a shield there. And since we give ourselves a shield advantage, I'm more than willing to let my Froslass go down. Doesn't look like we're quite going to make another move and we don't. But since the opponent stayed in here, we now basically have unaligned our Azu to the Lanturn. So we're going to wait our full switch clock here. And as you see, our switch clock is just about up. So basically by staying into our Froslass, we now have switch advantage, which is very nice. And they do bait us with a Surf, which is fine. They bring a Vigoroth in, which is not what I was expecting to see. But we should be okay here as long as they do have a flyer in back, which is what I'm reading. So I do see why they safe switch there. They safe switch so that they will basically be able to lure my Azu back out in order that their Lanturn can take care of it later. But again, if it's a flyer in back, Abomosnow can easily clean this game up. So since we're up 2-to-1 shields, I'm not going to be baiting here. I'm going straight for the Hydro Pump, knowing that they're probably not going to want to go down both shields. And they do let that go, and that's massive. Now we can just safely let this Body Slam go, farm all the way down. They're obviously going to be bringing back the Lanturn in, but I think I should be able to get to a play rough here, and then my switch clock will be up. And actually, I just banked the play rough, so that's probably even a better play. I will shield this just because we're getting fairly low on the Abomosnow, but as you see, they're not switching out again, so this cues me in that there's definitely a flyer in back. We're going to just send the Energy Ball here, no reason to bait. They let it go. What's in back? It's a Noctowl, as we expected, and I think we're going to be just fine here because we're at the back-to-back Weather Balls, and Noctowl is quite bulky, so this Weather Ball won't quite KO here if they let it through. And as you see, they do shield, but this one will just barely not KO. But since I smartly there saved that play rough, and switched out, we can just safely save our shield for the Azu now. And they realized their only win con there was to farm down. And that is going to be another very good game. Getting into the next battle here, we have Azu on the lead into Noctowl. So pretty neutral, but again, in neutral situations, you're going to want to be safe switching into the Froslass to draw out a potential Steel type. And since we switched in immediately, we do actually outpace the opponent to a Shadow Ball by 1 turn. And now they're going to have to shield in order to get their move off. And probably going to be a Shadow Ball, but it actually looks like I might no-shield this, and I call a Sky Attack bait, so that is a very risky call, but we get it. And honestly, not sure I would do that again, but we call it correctly there, and we're up shields now, and we're now luring out their Steel type, which is perfect. They very wisely do not throw on CMP there, knowing they would lose it, and they do overfarm. So nice play by them. But now we still have shield advantage. They cannot farm down, so they're forced to throw. And we can just bring in the Azu here and probably not quite farm down, but we can overfarm a little bit here. And this is a very nice situation for us now because we now again have drawn out hopefully their best answer to Abomosnow. And if it's something like the Lanturn Noctowl core that you guys have seen so often, that Abomosnow is going to be going off in the end game here. So probably going to be bringing back in the Noctowl, but they actually bring in the Lanturn. They do have a Lanturn, and it's running Water Gun. And now 2-to-1 shield Shadow Abomosnow is going to make this trainer very, very sad. We throw the Weather Ball. Are they going to commit a shield? They do commit the shield, and they're overfarming, and they overfarm too much, and we get to a second Weather Ball. And now what's basically going to be happening here is a 2-shield Shadow Abomosnow against a helpless Water Gun Lanturn. The real question is going to be, does Lanturn live a Energy Ball from this health range? Because Lanturn's very bulky, but Shadow Abomosnow hits very, very hard. We overfarm slightly. We're going for the Energy Ball here. We get the excellent. Does it KO? And they live with like 2 HP, so respect to the Lanturn there, but that's going to be a good game. So in the next battle, a Pelipper lead again with flyers. Even though Azu doesn't have a horrible matchup here, we do want to safe switch to draw out a potential counter to our Abomosnow in back. And they actually bring in a Trevenant, so even though we are hitting for super effective with the Powder Snows, as you see, Shadow Claws are just absolutely shredding us here, and they are the back-to-back Seed Bombs. Here I was hoping they would overfarm, that way I could get my second Avalanche off, but as you see, they very nicely CMP tie me here to the second Avalanche, and they're going to win CMP, so we're going to let this go. If I shield there, they just farm down. No reason to shield in my opinion, and we don't want our Shadow Abomosnow to be shieldless, so even though you may be wondering why I committed a shield in the first place in that matchup, the reason being, if I don't shield my Froslass at least once, they get to a Shadow Ball against my Abomosnow and I have to shield again anyway. But since they committed some energy onto the Froslass, they weren't able to get to the Shadow Ball. So as you see, I called that it's just the Seed Bomb there, knowing they were short. And they do have a G-Fisk in back, so this is going to be a little bit tricky, not what we were hoping to see in the back. So we very nicely are going to overfarm here, and we catch a Rock Slide on our Azu. And this is massive, because we've now wasted some energy on them, and as you see, Rock Slide does nothing to Azu, and they are now energy dry on the G-Fisk, and we have quite a bit of energy on our Abomosnow, so we'll keep that in mind. And the nice thing here is XL Azu can tank hits for days. This is going to be the Hurricane, but XL Azu shrugs it off, and we're going to carefully overfarm here, throwing our moves after 1 bubble for correct timing. And the Play Rough does a decent amount of damage, and I'm sensing a potential win con here. I'm going to let this go, and I think I can win this game if I can farm down this Pelipper. So we're going to come in. The wing attacks are going to do quite a bit of damage, but I think I can farm this thing down before he gets to another Weather Ball. It's going to be very close, and if I can come out of here with 100 energy, which I'm just 1 or 2 short from 100 energy, I think I can triple Weather Ball this G-Fisk. And as you saw, they did throw energy on the Azu, so they're energy dry. They're now going to be 2 more Mud Shots away, but we're now at the back-to-back Weather Balls. So the first one, they call it, the second one gets the shield, and the third one is going to take them out just as they're reaching the Rock Slide. And again, Shadow Abomosnow putting in work. In the next battle here, we have a Registeel lead, and this is pretty tricky for our whole team. But the nice thing is, Zap Cannon does not one-shot Azu. even though it does do a lot of damage. So we stay in here initially, and there's a couple ways I play this depending on if we get debuffed. And we'll have to see if I get debuffed in this one. And it looks like I do get debuffed. So rather than throwing the debuffed Hydro Pump, I will actually bring in the Froslass here. And again, knowing that Zap Cannon does not one-shot any of my mons, so I can tank this. Hopefully we don't get debuffed again. And actually we don't get debuffed there, so that's very nice. So now this Shadow Ball is going to do quite a bit of damage, and it's going to be a very difficult lock-on farm down for them. So we get the Shadow Ball off, and I know I would get outpaced just barely if I commit to a Shadow Ball. So I actually just get the Avalanche off here, and this is going to do a lot of damage, and it actually nearly KOs. And they actually throw energy, so this is perfect. Even though we've lost our Froslass, and we do have quite a bit of health lost on our Azu, we've now basically gotten rid of this Registeel. And the hope is going to be that that was their only answer to our Abomosnow. And oftentimes there's going to be flyers in the back if there's a Registeel lead. And they actually bring in a Sableye into our Azu, so very interesting. I do throw the Play Rough here. Not sure what they have in back if they're bringing in a Sableye. Here, I think I make a bit of a mistake. I over-farm there for correct timing, and they outpace. I could have just thrown the Play Rough there and either forced their last shield or done a lot of damage. And since I do that, they actually are able to make a very nice catch onto their Noctowl. But we're actually going to be okay here because one, Weather Ball does not KO the Noctowl anyway. And since we get that very nice chip damage, we now actually CMP tie them, and this Weather Ball will now KO. Do they commit the shield? And they just let it go. And they're probably thinking that Abomosnow is pretty glassy and Sableye is very strong, right? But Abomosnow is very, very spammy, and we actually outpace the Sableye to 2 moves. And even though this is only a Weather Ball, they are now easily in Weather Ball range. They do CMP timing to the next one, and I believe they are at the back-to-back. But since the first one was a CMP tie, we now will have priority on the second, and we're going to get our Weather Ball off. And this will be KOing, and again, Abomosnow closing very strong. So in the next match here, we have Azu again into a Azumarill. And honestly, probably one of the most boring mirror matches in the game. But I do like to play this a certain way as well. I like to typically trade Play Roughs at first. And then I do actually like to safe switch out of this at some point. Because, again, in neutral situations, unless you're reading that they may have flyers in the back, you do typically want to safe switch out to lure out a potential steel type. So we get the Play Rough off. Now my plan is going to be to over farm here significantly and just allow them to hit me with their Play Rough, and then I will be safe switching out because the Azu will basically be energy dry, and then our Backmon will have a much easier time taking care of this later on. So they bring in a Sableye, which is a bit unfortunate. One of the mons that will come into Froslass that, like, we're not necessarily trying to lure it out because Abomosnow has a pretty neutral matchup here, but that's okay because Azu's going to be able to take this out later. And we do get a shield, which is perfect. I don't bother shielding there, knowing that I have the Play Rough loaded. And I can just come in and either force them to shield, use their second shield, or just take this thing out. I throw one bubble knowing they're not at another move yet for correct timing. And this will probably KO if they don't shield here. And they just let it go. And what do they have in the back here? They bring back in the Azu. I think that we're not quite in Play Rough range, but it looks like I actually decide to bank the move. And they have an Altaria in the back. And a lot of times, actually, Registeels do pair up very nicely with Altaria. So maybe at the time I was reading there was an Altaria in the back. But what you're going to see again is Sableye was their only neutral answer to Abomosnow. And since Froslass drew it out, Abomosnow now has a basically Altaria on Azu matchup. So we farm down the Altaria, leave with the energy ball loaded, and Abomosnow again proving to be a very nice sweeper in the open Great League. Energy ball slaughters the Azu, and GG. So I believe we do have maybe 2 or 3 battles left. I forget, maybe 1 or 2. I'm not sure, honestly. There's quite a few battles in this video since I haven't made one in a while, and we face one of the worst leads that we could ask for, a Trevenant. And this is very, very tricky because, as you see, Froslass doesn't love this matchup. Here I actually make a nice play and I call a Seed Bomb. That way, in this matchup, I'm at the very least giving myself a shield advantage. And since the Trevenant is staying in here, this number 1 gives me hope that they could have flyers in the back, but it also gives me fact that I'm not aligning this to my Azu, because by staying in again, they basically lose switch advantage, and I keep my Azu away from this. So this is perfect. We come in with the Abomosnow. We do shield. They bait, which is unfortunate, but I know since they baited that this now cannot be a Shadow Ball. So I call the Seed Bomb. We have some energy. What's in the back? And they have an Altaria in the back. And if you're bringing an Altaria into a loaded Abomosnow, this opponent must be so weak to our Abomosnow. And of course, it's a Lanturn. And since the Sparks are not doing a lot of damage, I think baiting here and having a bait called would be a potential lose con. So we're going to just go straight for the Energy Ball, knowing that they cannot farm down. And once again, will this one-shot? I don't think it quite will, but it does massive damage. And we're now going to bring the Azu in, knowing that a Thunderbolt's not going to KO from full health. So even though they probably will be, they actually don't bait, which is surprising, but even though they're going to get to another move here, this Thunderbolt will not even come anywhere near KOing the thick XL Azu, and one more bubble should do the trick, and that is another good game. So as you see, guys, so many teams are just core broken by Abomosnow. A Mawille on the next battle. This one's actually running Fire Fang, and this is a very bad matchup for our backline, so we absolutely have to stay in here. And this will probably just be either a Pup or an Iron Head. Don't have to shield this quite yet. But again, we will be shielding if they get to another move, because we do not want our backline aligned with this. Here you could probably argue I should have baited. Mawille's pretty glassy, but I thought they might try to call a move there, and they don't. And they bring a Sableye in here, so a bit tricky. I do throw the Play Rough here, kind of hoping that they just let this go, actually. And I will be switching out of here because I need that Azu again for the Mawille. I bring the Abomosnow, and you may be wondering why. Because Abomosnow obviously is going to be taking super effective from that Mawille. And I do shield return there, which is huge. But as you're going to see, this Mawille is fairly low. And Shadow on Shadow, these Weather Balls are going to do massive damage. And even though the Fire Fangs are double super effective, just look at how much a Weather Ball is going to do on this thing. We do get a shield, actually. And on 1 HP, we get to another Weather Ball. And now you guys are going to see how much damage this does. And it actually almost KOs. And that's very impressive for a resisted move. Unfortunately, they do live on 1 HP, but we'll just bring in the Azu here, and they actually aggressively switch into their Trevenant in the back, which is going to be a bit tricky. I don't know if the Mawille's quite out of move. I think they are. And unfortunately, our switch clock wasn't up, so we couldn't bring in the Frost, but I think we should be okay, but we're going to have to call a bait here. And I call a Seed Bomb there. If I shield a Seed Bomb, they easily get to a Shadow Ball, but since I call it, I think we're actually going to be able to farm down, shield the second Seed Bomb, and by farming down, actually I'm not going to farm down, but I guess this makes sense too, because if the Mawille's at a move, he's so low, he has to throw it there, and then Azu just bubbles down, so I get that the opponent just committed to a farm down there, but one Powder Snow takes it out, so very good game, and this is actually the last battle, guys, and this one is very tricky. As you see, Toxapex, and really if you look at the team comp, poison types are very tricky for this team because they're going to be beating the Azu quite comfortably, and they're also going to be doing a lot of damage to our Abomosnow. So basically, if you see a poison type, especially a poison water type, it's basically a GG. I do play this one out. I did see quite a few Toxapex leads, and I actually make this one pretty close, but typically I just got absolutely slaughtered by them. So as you see, we actually safe switch into the Abomosnow, knowing that Azu can do nothing. We don't get a shield, obviously, but we're able to get this thing at half health. And again, since they stay in, we basically now have switch advantage. But the opponent very wisely is going to probably be safe switching out of here. As you see, he safe switches out of there knowing that he wants to align this Toxapex to my Azu in the end game. So he safe switches out of there. I don't really see a point in shielding my Azu knowing there's a very healthy Toxapex in play. So I'm basically going to just tank these moves from the Rapidash. Hopefully, basically my only chance at winning this game is if they have something that's very weak to Froslass and back. So we're going to throw the Play Rough knowing that the Rapidash is very glassy. they're going to be bringing in the Toxapex here, and I'm just going to commit to the Hydro Pump here. I need to get this thing as low as possible to have any chance at winning this here. So unfortunately, what you're going to see is Toxapex is just a tanky beast here. And at this point, we have 2 shields. We kind of have to start shielding. And we just have to hope that there's like a 10 CP Magikarp in the back. And it's actually a Diggersby here. So at the time, I was thinking, can I do this? But what I forgot is that Diggersby is very, very thick. And unfortunately, I don't think we're actually going to make a very risky call here, and we actually call a Fire Punch bait, which is huge, recognizing that we could survive it. If they Earthquake there, it's GG's, but now it looks like we actually might get to 2 avalanches, and we do get to another avalanche. Is this going to KO the Diggersby? I know that they are now at the Fire Punch. It doesn't KO, but they don't throw the move. I tried to snipe with Yazoo. The move doesn't go through, but they get us very low with the Mud Shots, and they recognize there that they could just basically Poison Jab down with their Toxapex, and that's going to be a good game. So I know that last battle, the commentary kind of got lost a little bit, but really, guys, if you see a Poison Jab user, especially a Water Poison type, you basically just lose the game. So keep that in mind with this team. It's not perfect, but we had some very fun wins there. And as you see, Shadow Abomosnow is very, very deadly. If you can lure out their only answer to it, like we did with the Froslass quite a few times, it can absolutely destroy some backlines. And again, Froslass is a very, very good safe switch. So the double ice backline put in some nice work there. And thank you guys for watching. That was the end of the video. And I am hopefully going to be able to get some more content out to you guys more regularly here soon. But I think this probably will be the only video I'm able to post this week. So thanks for watching. And again, remember, if you're enjoying my content and you have not subscribed, please do so, because the more subscribers we can get, the more Pokemon my wife will let me play.